Yeah. Hello, world. Welcome to the Culture Clinic show, where we help people leaders shape great workplace culture so that your people love where they work. My name is Joe. I'm one of the co-founders here at Gusto, and I've been working closely with HR leaders, HR professionals for the last 10 years to help them build recognition programs and help them shape great culture. And so excited to be here with my colleague, Shelly DaCosta. And Shelly, I'll zip it to you for a little hello and let the team know a little bit about you.
Hi, everyone. I'm excited to be here as well today. I've worked in human resources for the last 35 years, predominantly in the rewards area, in compensation, total rewards, always human resources, but with some really great companies, with some really great culture, from public sector and healthcare to high tech and manufacturing like BlackBerry, companies with amazing culture and retail like IKEA, and then even in the financial sector with insurance companies. And even did a little bit of teaching and some consulting gigs along the way. So I think I have a real passion for doing what's right for the employee and for recognition and engagement. So I think all of that fits really well with what we're going to talk about today, and I'm jazzed.
That's why we love you, Shelly. And you kind of glossed over it, but the theme today is really around frontline and deskless industries and employee retention in those industries. And you touched on some of the workplaces and industries that you've worked at. And so in your career, it sounds like you've worked in frontline and deskless industries, at a whole bunch of different companies. So I think that you have a really unique lens on our conversation for today.
Great.
Okay, so for the world out there watching, this is an Ask Us Anything format. So feel free to put your questions for Shelly in the chat. The sweet spot is really around people and culture, total rewards, recognition, best practices, etc. Shelly has a wealth of knowledge, and of course, I've kind of been living and doing this for a while, and I'm happy to chime in, and when it makes sense. Again, the kind of kickoff topic for today is employee retention in frontline and deskless industries. Okay, so to get things moving along, maybe just kind of like a kickoff question here, Shelly, before we move into some of the questions that we received in advance. And it's kind of a big question, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. Why is retention such a problem for frontline and deskless employers right now?
Wow. A lot of people are talking about this. It's really top of mind for people. And it's such a big group. I think for us to just even stop and think about what do we mean by deskless or frontline employees, because it covers so much. I mean, the estimates out there is it's about 80% of the global workforce are what we would call deskless or frontline employees. That's equates to something like 2.7 billion employees right now out there globally that would fit that category. And when you're thinking of that, you're considering, okay, frontline, deskless during the pandemic. Are you thinking, healthcare workers, right? Retail workers, people in the stores, truck drivers, delivery drivers. I mean, to me, it feels like a bit of a no-brainer that there's a problem retaining that group right now. When you think that was the group that kept everything running, they kept the world going for all of us, for many of us, and for themselves. But they've got to be exhausted. They're burnt out. In a lot of organizations, they feel devalued. Nothing's changed. If we start to think about frontline healthcare workers, they're still wearing masks, and we're exhausted because we're in Zoom calls all day long. But think of the exhaustion they've got, frontline healthcare. Wearing a mask for 12-hour shifts, those kinds of things, let alone putting their lives at risk. Like, there's just so much to that equation. It's so big, but I think it's just to stop and consider for a second that while the rest of the world, kind of shut down, were able to work from home and no longer had to commute, that group was out there keeping everything running.
Totally, totally. And I think back to mid-pandemic, my partner, she worked in the emerge room, and she would come home after a huge shift wearing a hazmat suit. Like, actually, she was like head to toe hazmat for a period of time, and I'm like, well, I was on Zoom in the home office all day.
Yeah.
It's kind of tough, but a little bit different, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. Like, I just don't think a lot of us had to, and we cheered them on, like particularly healthcare workers, and then there was a movement to, think about the people in the supply lines and the people in the distribution lines, you know what I mean? Give them a round of applause. But, there was a fair bit for healthcare workers, but it kind of petered down. It's like, oh, thanks, okay, and then it stopped. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And so it's got to be just so tough, because in many respects, with what's happening now with respiratory, with the hospitals, everything, it's still going on.
yeah. We work closely with a lot of companies in the frontline industry, and candidly, retention has always been an issue in frontline industries, but it's gotten worse sort of during and post pandemic. And so what we believe, and again, in conversations with our clients, is that one of the reasons this has happened is because people's quality of life suffered.
Yes.
Right? Like, we're in a time where people really, they not just want good quality of life, but they sort of demand it. And so when we think about the world over time, a lot has changed. Right? In the 50s and in the 60s, people were happy to get a paycheck, and that's because they were in survival mode. Hey, I'm just trying to survive, and I'll take whatever job I can, and you're going to pay me, and I'll stay with you regardless of how I get treated. Right? In the 70s and 80s, people were, now starting to be motivated by having a career and having sort of like a standard of living, right? And then in the 90s and the 2000s, people were starting to think more about work-life balance as their standard of living was increasing. And then today, people really do want to work at organizations that align with their values and give them a sense of purpose. And I would say that sense of purpose often means quality of life for people. And, if an organization is struggling to attract and retain people, they might need to reflect on their culture and whether it's an environment that gives people that sense of purpose and ultimately the quality of life that they're after.
I think that's such a great way to present it, Joe, like to put it out there, you know what I mean? As a rewards professional, I think of exactly that, but in very simplistic terms. If my dad was looking to go for a job, to leave one organization, go to another organization, the whole conversation would have been about, they're going to pay me this. Right? Like, he didn't need to come home with a spreadsheet and say, okay, well, the vacation plan is this and the benefits are this, and I'm going to have that. I'm going to have that. It would be like, they're going to pay me this. The old company was going to pay me that. And here I go. And then for myself, it would have been more looking at, because I'm in the field, a little bit more around, what benefits do I have to pay for those benefits? What are those options? You know what I mean? And that, it expands. And yourself, even different, and the next generation, even think how much we're considering now when we're deciding whether we're going to go work for somebody else. We want to know everything about that organization and how they align with our values, because I think the pandemic, more than ever, had people really think about, what do they value.
Totally. And, we're seeing it now as well in sort of post-pandemic, pre-recession. Are we in a recession? We're still trying to figure that out. A lot of layoffs, a lot of companies, true colors are shining through right now, and sort of like how they're handling their people as we approach some economic headwinds. But let's shift from there a little bit. And so we do have some questions, and I think it ties in nicely. You talked a little bit about how the pandemic created burnout, especially in frontline industries, et cetera. So this question came in from Tom. So after the pandemic, a lot of the turnover in my company was caused by burnout. And Tom is in healthcare. What tips can you offer to better support employees under pressure?
Okay, thanks for your question, Tom. First of all, I think employers more than ever now need to look at the workplace schedules, the workload itself, right? Especially with what's happening, right? We're notorious for downsizing an organization, or taking 10% of the population, the employees, out of the workplace. But did we automate 10% of the work? What happened to the work that those employees were doing? Did we no longer do that work? Do we know, you're right? So we have that tendency, and we don't stop and kind of say, well, what are we doing to these frontline workers, particularly in healthcare, where we have less staff, but the same work, right? So I know we try to manage the beds and all of those kinds of things in hospitals directly, but I think organizations need to stop and really look at the schedules. I think we have to put in place more supports for mental health. What is the organization doing, and what are the avenues for that employee to support their own personal mental health and burnout? Manage the risks in the organization, and the risks around the burnout, and the risks around mental health, the risks around health and safety and wellness in general. Train the leaders in that organization with empathy and understanding, so that they're really aware of it. A lot of times leaders have been in those frontline jobs. They know, and they know the ins and outs and what works and doesn't work. Review the support programs that are in place. So your EAP programs, your benefits, are they getting to those people? Do they know about them? Do they have access to them? If they're frontline, they're not in front of a desk. They don't get their information the way the rest of us do. They don't maybe even have personal email addresses and all of those kinds of things within their company. It might be a group chat. What's the digital delivery to those people, and how does that work? And in healthcare is probably a really great example for us to think about offering sabbaticals and changing up frontline, where you're right there with the patient in the line of fire, for 12-hour shifts straight. Is that humanly possible in today's environment, or is there a way that we could rotate that? So I have got that shift this week, but next week I can be more back room. What can I do that I'm not quite in the front line for 2 weeks, and take that break, that emotional break, but I can keep working, right? And allowing for, or it might need me to be time off. And I know that's really hard, because employers are saying, are you kidding? I can't backfill and I can't staff and everything. But they have to take a hard line and start to look at that, because if they don't, they're going to lose the employee anyway. They're going to leave, or they're going to go off sick, or they're going to go off for depression, mental health, and burnout. So I think it's really important for them to pay some attention to that and look at what they can do to rejig, because it's just too important, and it's costing too much. It's costing people's lives. It's costing people's jobs and their livelihood.
Healthcare is so interesting because it's obviously so important. I come from a family when both my parents worked my mom was a nurse for 50 years. My father supported people with developmental disabilities. They're some of the hardest industries. They're some of the most important, and yet, they don't tend to be very well paid. But that's one conversation. But the other thing is, they generally are like under recognized for all the hard work. So not only are they not getting paid well in many instances, especially in Canada, but they often don't get a ton of recognition. And so I think, again, thinking back to conversations with my parents as a kid, I think one of the important things to do is during these tough times is to acknowledge that times are tough. People want to know that you recognize that you're in a time that's more difficult than usual.
Yeah.
And then I think it's really important to show these people appreciation and recognition when they're under pressure, and not wait until the end of the year to give recognition, or not just wait for service anniversary awards every 1, 3, 5, 10, 15 years to say, hey, good job. Recognition needs to be very consistent, especially in these very challenging environments in some cases in healthcare. And that's really why it's so important to empower leaders and managers to recognize their direct reports in real time when they're going above and beyond. And I believe that if all recognition is coming out of HR, then there's a big opportunity being missed. Any thoughts on that, Shelley?
I agree entirely. I think that whole piece around how they're rewarded and recognized and even paid, because a lot of those healthcare positions, and I used to do a fair bit of work around pay equity and pay inequity and things like that, and gender predominant, pay, equal pay for equal work, etc. But the concept that a lot of those jobs in the past, people would go into those, predominantly women, as a calling. So I'll go be a teacher, I'll go be a nurse, I'll go be a healthcare worker because I have a calling. And the compensation, the reward is a job in itself, right? Because it's so fulfilling. And that's changed. It's not the same. And so a lot of people think that's why those jobs have been undervalued or devalued and not recognized for years, was because people never knew how to put a value on those roles, because they were a lot of things that women did in the past in homes and things like that for free. So how do you put a value on teaching, and how do you put a value on nursing and caring for people and all of that? So, right. And it's not until we've actually got some more equity in it that people are saying, well, wait a minute, isn't what I do just as important as that? Why shouldn't I be getting those accolades? Why don't I get those rewards? And I'm not saying that there still isn't reward in the job that they're doing, but it's massively changed because the circumstances have changed and the environments have changed and the system, like healthcare, has changed, right? And the pressures on those systems. So more than ever before, that group needs to be recognized, almost to make up for it all, So yeah, recognition for that group is huge,
No,
very huge,
absolutely.
because they're often not getting what they used to get or may have never received from the role itself.
Key takeaway here: recognize your healthcare workers. Make sure if you're receiving care, give them a thank you, right? Like obviously we want to do it at the company level, but hey, as people receiving their care, let's show them our love. Okay. Let's shift gears a little bit. One eye on the clock. Want to make sure we get through all of these key questions here. So this question, Shelley, came in from Raj. My company is having trouble matching competitors' pay in the current market. What else can we do to attract talent?
I would look at and market the heck out of your total rewards. Do you have an EVP? Do you have an employee value proposition? And if you don't, develop one. I read something the other day that they think only 1 out of 4 employers actually have a stated EVP. So that means 75% of employers don't. Think of all those employees working for those organizations that are missing that promise. I think of the EVP as that promise to the employees. Here's what you're getting. Like, here's the value in working here, right? That's that employee value proposition. You come here and you work and you will get this. And it's not enough, as you stated earlier, to say that, well, I get paid. It's much more I'm looking for. I want, I'm putting my value on my work life, I value on all of those kinds of things. So what are those elements? What is that, the total comp rewards? And find out, if you have one, or even if you don't, what are the attraction items that your existing employees love? Like, what are they talking about? Do they love the fact that you have flex benefits? Do they love the fact that you have unlimited vacation? Put those out there, right? Like, a lot of our recruitment modules, all of those kinds of things. Are your recruiters, are your leaders that are engaging in these conversations, that are doing the hiring, are they well aware of your employee value proposition or your offerings to employees, so they can help sell those? Because those same things that are keeping your current employees there are the same things that are going to attract other great employees to come and work for you. So use those, or consider those, and consider beefing that up, right? And there's a lot of organizations will put in an employee value proposition only, purely because they realize it's an attraction tool. Now I could say this is what we stand for, and this is why it's such a great place for you to come and work. And the other half are putting it in place because they want to make that promise to the existing employees to retain them. And it helps them build everything from leader expectations, and this is what you will get if you work for this company.
Yeah, and so a lot of people know this, that, well, everyone's talked about sort of like the Great Resignation and all these things, quiet quitting, all that. Something like half of the workforce is actively looking for new opportunities. So this actually presents an amazing opportunity for a lot of organizations. The organizations that are prioritizing their people and prioritizing their culture are actually winning the war for talent, and they're the ones, they're the desirable places to work in their industry.
Yes.
And so I have a strong opinion on this, and it might be biased, but if you're having trouble matching competitor pay, I believe the most impactful and cost-effective thing you can do is invest in an employee recognition program.
Mm-hmm.
And to back that up a little bit. So imagine giving someone a 1% raise. Would it create any meaningful impact around retention? No. Would it help you attract more candidates? Hey, we pay 1% more. No. Would it help with your employer brand? No. And so, basically giving your people a 1% raise would do nothing. And, arguably is a waste of money. By comparison, companies that invest 1% of payroll towards recognition create recognition-rich cultures where people want to come and people want to stay. And so this means you're not only keeping your best people, but you're building an employer brand. So, think 5-star Glassdoor reviews, think effective referral programs. And the impact of this is you're actually going to attract more better talent. And at the end of the day, people want to work at a place where they feel seen and appreciated for their efforts.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a huge win-win. It's a huge win-win. And when you think about it, it's a small amount of money that, like you said, if you put it towards comp or pay, it's going to just be lost. It doesn't have that impact. Whereas if you combine that and put 1% of payroll and put in a recognition program that works for your employees, it's phenomenal. But the domino effect of that amongst your employees and building that culture and the culture of recognition and attraction, all of it works for engagement.
Totally. And sometimes there's this like mindset shift that needs to happen, especially, at the leadership level, right? Where they see this like raw number of 1%, whatever that means in terms of your payroll, and think like, wow, that's crazy. We're going to invest that much in recognition. Well, if you think about it in the way I just kind of compared it, like the impact of a raise is nothing, and the impact of the recognition is mind-boggling. So, yeah, truly a powerful way to compete in the market, especially if you're having trouble on the pay side.
Exactly.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay, let's jump into a question from Rebecca. For me, the key to retention is always engagement. What strategies can I use to better engage employees?
Okay, thanks, Rebecca. I would say one of the key strategies is to train and develop your leaders. I think leaders are what's going to kind of get organizations through the Great Resignation, through quiet quitting, all of those, right? Building empathy in your leaders, having them understand how they can massively influence engagement. They can be your ambassadors for your EVP, right? Like there's nothing like a leader that understands there's this toolkit of things that this organization is offering their employees, and be the ambassador for that, to know that this employee, recognition is really important to them. So I'm going to make sure they're aware of the program, they have access to it, and I'm going to recognize and reward every time they go above and beyond. This employee needs to understand, what we have available for them in terms of an EAP program or family programs, leaves of absence, sabbaticals, vacation, unlimited vacation, all of those kinds of things. But a lot of times, and as I said, the leaders have been in those frontline roles. They know what works and doesn't work, especially if they've been in a frontline role in that organization. So a lot of times they know how to fix it, and they know how tough it is. So I often think, open up to some of those leaders and have some focus groups with them about what's right and what's wrong and how you would fix it. It's amazing how many, if you gave them some tools, how they would understand on the ideas they have to engage their employees, right? Or to recognize or to build programs that help recognize and engage your employees. And they understand the costs as well, right? But they also can really see, because they're so close to it, that cost benefit analysis of, if we put this program in place and it enhances safety and it enhances this, it's going to save us all these dollars. Well, these savings, give me back 25% of those savings and I'll put it into a recognition for these programs. So I keep creating those behaviors and I keep creating that environment. That it's just, it goes on and on. So, when I think about engagement, I think about leaders. You have to have the programs in place, but leaders are huge. A lot of people stay working for organizations because they love working for that leader and what that represents. And of course, the alternative, they leave because of leaders. So pay attention to your leaders, and I think a lot of engagement can take place through them.
It's the old saying, right? People leave their managers, not the company. And
Yeah.
there's so much truth to that. And so I love your thought process here, Shelley. And so a few things come to mind with regards to strategies to build engagement. And a lot of those things are around leadership that you touched on. So one thing that jumps out to me is we encourage our clients, like a lot of them don't do this out of the gate. And when we start engaging with them through rewards and recognition, we kind of like suggest they do this very small thing that a lot of companies don't do. And that is hire people that share your values.
Mhm.
And so, first step, bring people in that have kind of that shared set of values. But then to your point around leadership, a couple things jump out to me, regular one-on-ones, right? So make sure your leaders are connecting regularly with their direct reports. Clear career growth opportunities. If people don't see the path forward, like they're going to start looking elsewhere, right? And they're going to kind of disengage. They're not going to level up their skill set, etc. Other thing, regular feedback, and then also regular recognition. And we really do encourage, our clients to give recognition and constructive feedback at a 5-to-1 ratio.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this really, really great book. It's called The 7 Hidden Reasons People Leave. And they talk a lot about this. And so really thinking about making sure that you're weaving recognition in. Feedback's important, but doing it at a ratio that, is not always kind of beating people down.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Let's keep moving along here. We're almost on the half hour. So let's see. We've got 2 more questions on the books ready to go. And of course, if anyone wants to chime in, you're welcome to. This one came in from Tony. I work in retail and a lot of people treat it as a stopgap job. How do I encourage more employees to see it as a long-term career?
That's a good one. Right out the gate, stop treating them like a short-term gig employee and stop paying and rewarding them like a short-term gig employee, right? Like it's crazy that so many retailers want, the heart and soul and passion of this part-time employee that, they change their shifts at the last minute. They don't let them know about this. They don't communicate with them. They don't make them feel like they're part of the whole broader team. They don't offer benefits. They don't offer rewards. They're not part of it. Like we've got this such and such a program, but you're not eligible for that. And we have this and this and this program, but you're not eligible for that. Like organizations where I have seen where that works, they embrace that part-time, short-term gig, whatever mentality, and they treat those employees like permanent, valued employees in their organization. IKEA is the best example I've got there. Was leaders had a mandate to have employees know, whether they're part-time or full-time, their schedule 2 weeks in advance. No ifs, ands, or buts. They were held to that standard, because they got a life too, right? Whereas so many retailers say, oh, you know what? There are people that have come back in the workforce, they're retirees, or their kids in high school, and this and that and the other. And so it was a matter of looking at them as a whole person. No, they've got school, they've got another job, they've got this. Why wouldn't we give them that respect so that they know what their schedule is and they can count on this, so they can set their life around it and have it all work together? Like that was just so respectful. Another piece would be career opportunities, right? A lot of people, oh, okay, well, you're only here, you're only working, right? You hear that about McDonald's, right? They got the school and the development opportunities, right? IKEA is another example. The amount of people that I could talk about that started as carts workers and ended up being a store manager and then ended up traveling to Sweden to work on development. It was just incredible because there was so many career opportunities, development opportunities. You can take this path and this is the next job and this is the next job and this is the next job. Or it's okay if you want to stay at this job, we're still going to treat you with respect. You don't have to be on the high flying career path for us to treat you differently, but put that in place. And again, like retail's not immune to the stress of the frontline stress, right? A lot of people they have burnout in retail because you're in that front of that customer every single day, and so you could do the rotation around the high stress roles that we talked about. There's also opportunities to just think about your strategy, which you're putting out. I mean, lots and lots of organizations in retail now are pushing out no cashiers. So it's automated checkout, right? They're doing that, post pandemic. They're doing that while there's a work shortage already. They're doing that while people are already stressed. And I can see it's a plus to do so that employee isn't having to be a cashier in front of a whole pile of people. But at the same time, that employee is taking the brunt of that angry customer that's got, a truckload of groceries to cash out and doesn't want to cash it themselves. They're like, no, it's your job. I'm buying the groceries. I don't want to put these through myself. And I've heard such angry stories about that, customers lashing out in grocery stores because they're not opening up more lanes and they're not, right. They haven't got the people to staff it. But who's getting the brunt of that argument and that complaining and literally yelling and things in that organization is those frontline people.
Yeah. You make so many great points there, Shelley. And, at Gusto, we have a lot of clients in the retail space. And so in chatting with some of our clients that have, seen great success attracting and retaining, we hear a lot of the things that you just touched on, right? Like they've made a concerted effort to stop treating people like they're in a stopgap job, right? Yeah. Another thing they touched on is really training people with transferable skills. So it's like in retail, for example, are you training people with sales skills that would kind of like live with them as long as they're with you and beyond? You touched on something else, right? Like a cashier that has to, deal with an angry customer. Are you actually treating people in conflict resolution and how to handle those situations? Like those are things you might want to consider, right?
Yep.
And then you touched on some other things that really jumped out at me, which is showing people a path to career development. We really do want to recognize our people regularly and empowering leaders and managers with tools to recognize their direct reports in real time. And historically, recognition programs have been very challenging to run in the retail environment.
Yes.
The last 10 to 15 years, there's sort of been a perception that points recognition programs are a bit of the gold standard. Points programs are good in some situations, but usually those situations where like everyone's at a desk, everyone's at a computer, points can be given out. And that doesn't really work in a retail environment where people are not at a workstation. They don't have a company computer. They don't have a company phone. They may not have a company email address. So thinking about a program that works in an environment where people are sort of offline. So that's something to think about. And so if you are running a program that works in recognition, the impact of this is really will help to build your employer brand, which, again, will help you attract great fit people. So
yep.
A lot of things you can do there. Okay. This is our last question, Shelley, and I'm keeping an eye on the clock here. This one's in from Camilla. My company is short-staffed for the holiday season. How do I maintain morale at such a busy time when employees are overworked?
Okay, that's a tough one.
Mhm.
It feels in so many organizations though that that kind of short staff, I know things are worse right now, but that short staff over the holidays, hectic timelines, busy time happens year after year after year after year. And I think one of the worst things for employees is they see that and nothing gets better. Like what are you doing to work with those employees to plan, to staff up in advance, to figure this out, to even ask them, wow, when you get through last year's holiday season, you sit down and you're saying, what worked, what didn't work, how did we fix this, how do we not have this happen, what's our crisis management plan here? So you know what I mean, what have we looked at, what's our risk management, like post pandemic, how many organizations actually have pulled out their crisis management? I mean, that'd be fascinating, and said, okay, now we really have a whole lot more things to consider, because who would have thought this could happen and this could happen and this could happen? Well, it's the same thing. It's our busy season or it's our busy cycle, etc. This is, we're probably not going to be able to have that. We have to count on some people being sick. We're going to have to count on this, and have employees be part of that solution, like value their opinions. And I think that's really big for some employees to feel like, okay, they're working on this is going to get better. I see a future here where it's not as crazy. I see a future where it's not as stressful. Maybe I can stick around, maybe I do want to stay in this organization. So plan for it and figure that out, ask them what would help. Is it more time? Is it more money? Is it more time off? And celebrate the successes too. Celebrate and recognize what they've been through, whether it's in the middle of it or even after it. Knowing you're going to go through it, all of those kinds of things. Take opportunities for that. But anticipate and plan for the future waves, whether they're waves of the pandemic or waves of the holidays or waves of staff shortages. Let's learn from it and keep building so we keep getting better. That's what means a lot to employees. Whereas if it feels like it's the same old, and nobody's listening to me, and particularly back to the frontline employees that are feeling this pain, if you don't have those communication channels open for them, that two-way, if they're not seeing a leader regularly that they can say, hey, how about this? And what is happening here? Or someplace where they can log into, or some social media within the organization, or a chat line that they can talk to senior people or access their benefits. All of those things help them feel like they belong to that organization, that they are valued and heard. So, right back to, we were talking about in retail, give those employees a voice and let them be heard. It's too easy to say, oh, we can't do an engagement survey with that group. How they don't have laptops to log in and answer the questions. If you want to do it, you can do it. You give them time at the beginning of the shift. You have iPads set up. You have laptops set up in cloakrooms and locker rooms and things like that. And you have paid time and you reward them. Oh, great. Thank you for filling out the survey. Here you go. It just, there's so many opportunities, but we have to really just step back and think about them.
We got to make the effort, right? We got to set expectations. We've got to open the dialogue. This is awesome. Great stuff. Shelly, 2 minutes to spare here. So I want to make sure that we carve out 2 minutes to just go over some key takeaways. So you've dropped some pearls of fire here, and I've been trying to take some notes as we go. So I'm gonna recap what I heard as some key takeaways, and then if you think I missed anything or want to add anything, by all means, please do that. But key takeaways today. So one, companies need to create a competitive EVP, or employee value proposition.
Yes.
Second piece to that, make sure your leaders are ambassadors for your employee value proposition.
Yes. Yes.
Third takeaway, ensure policies and benefits align with remote, hybrid, and frontline employees' expectations. Let's not forget about the frontline team members. 4, open a dialogue with frontline employees to better understand what they need and ensure they have equitable access to information and programs.
Two-way, absolutely.
5, and I've got 2 more, invest in recognition versus giving incremental pay increase. 6, empower managers to recognize people in real time. And 7, stop treating employees like they're in a stopgap job.
Right.
Anything else you'd like to add, or did I cover it?
Wow, I think you got them all there. Good job.
Love
I
it.
think so. I just talked too much because you summarized everything I said. I think that's it.
All right, with 10 seconds to spare, really appreciate the time, Shelley. If all of you watching enjoyed this and want more culture building content, please do check out our YouTube channel. And we'll see you same time next week for the next discussion.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.